Welcome to Solar Age, the podcast that shines a light on the path to a brighter, more sustainable future. Join us as we explore the transformative power of technology in creating a Solarpunk world.
Hey Solar Age listeners, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into something I think you're already pretty passionate about. Solarpunk.
Yeah.
That future where clean energy and tech create a world of abundance.
It's a future that's closer than we think, and we'll be using Tony Seba's work on clean disruption as our guide.
Okay.
Think plummeting solar costs, electric vehicles, changing the game, even the potential of self-driving cars.
Yeah, we're going to break down how all these pieces fit together,
Right.
giving you, our Solarpunk pioneers, even more fuel for your journey towards this brighter future.
Seba argues that we're witnessing the end of the Stone Age of energy.
Okay.
Not because we're running out of fossil fuels, but because something better has arrived.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Help me understand the Stone Age of energy idea.
Sure.
What's the connection to Solarpunk?
Okay, so think back to the actual Bronze Age.
Okay.
It wasn't about a lack of stones, it was about bronze being superior.
Right.
Clean energy is like that bronze. It's outcompeting fossil fuels because it's simply a better technology.
So for our listeners, this means more than just environmental benefits.
Yeah.
It means better, more efficient technology is winning out.
Exactly, just like bronze tools were sharper and more durable. Clean energy is cheaper, more efficient, and ultimately more abundant.
But are the big energy companies really going to just disappear? They seem pretty entrenched.
They're fighting to hold on, but think about Kodak.
Okay.
What happened when they ignored digital photography?
Right.
Those one-hour photo booths vanished practically overnight.
Yeah.
The same thing is happening with gas stations and power plants as we transition to a cleaner system.
Right.
The old ways just can't compete.
So for our Solar Age listeners, this is a signal to pay attention to where you invest your time and resources.
Yes.
The old energy giants might not be around forever.
Absolutely. Now, Seba emphasizes that solar electric vehicles and even self-driving cars aren't isolated advancements. They work together, accelerating each other's growth. Think about the internet. You needed PCs, smartphones, and widespread connectivity for it to truly take off.
So it's like a positive feedback loop where each technology makes the other stronger.
Exactly.
But let's zoom in on solar for a minute. What makes it so disruptive?
What's fascinating is the speed of change.
Yeah.
Solar costs have dropped 154 times since the 1970s.
154 times. That's almost unimaginable. What drove that kind of dramatic shift?
Technological innovation, primarily.
Okay.
More efficient panels, better manufacturing processes, it
Okay.
all adds up. And here's the kicker. Unsubsidized solar is already cheaper than subsidized fossil fuels in many places.
So even without government support, it's winning on pure economics.
Yeah.
That's got to have huge implications for the average person.
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't just about those massive solar farms.
Right.
Rooftop solar is growing like wildfire.
Wow.
Think about how fast satellite TV took off. We're
Right.
seeing similar adoption rates with solar.
This means our Solar Age listeners are in a prime position to benefit.
Yes.
Not just by going solar themselves, but maybe by investing in this growing sector too.
Great point. Now, this rise of rooftop solar is part of a bigger shift towards what's called distributed energy.
I've heard that term thrown around, but to be honest, I'm still a bit fuzzy on what it actually means.
Yeah.
Can you break it down for us?
Imagine energy being produced where it's used on rooftops in communities, even individual homes, instead of at giant centralized power plants.
Okay.
That's distributed energy.
So instead of a few big players controlling everything, it's more decentralized, like
Like the internet, exactly.
Yeah.
And this shift is shaking up those big utility companies. Their business model relies on selling us power during peak demand, but what happens when we're generating our own power during those times?
Their profits take a hit.
Right.
And that's got to have consequences for how they operate.
Exactly. They either adapt or become the expensive backup option, much like landlines after cell phones became ubiquitous.
Okay, so for our listeners, this means potentially lower energy bills, more control over their energy choices,
Yeah,
and a more resilient energy system overall.
you got it. Now, while we're on the topic of disruption, let's talk about electric vehicles.
All right, bring on the EVs.
Okay.
They seem to be everywhere these days, but are they really going to completely change the auto industry?
It's not just hype, it's physics and economics. EVs are simply more efficient.
Right.
Traditional cars waste up to 80% of their energy, while EVs convert about 80% to power.
Wow.
It's a complete reversal.
So less wasted energy translates to less money spent on fuel,
Right.
which is good news for our wallets and the planet.
Exactly. Plus, EVs have far fewer parts, meaning fewer breakdowns and maintenance costs.
Right.
Imagine saying goodbye to oil changes and those expensive trips to the mechanic.
That alone would be a major win. Now, I know Tesla has been leading the charge, but are other car companies really going to catch up?
They have to. By 2025, it's predicted that gas-powered cars simply won't be able to compete with EVs on price or performance.
Wow, so this isn't just a gradual shift, it's a complete takeover in the making.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, this means a whole new way of thinking about transportation is on the horizon.
Welcome back to our Solarpunk Deep Dive Solar Age listeners.
Last time we were talking about the shift from the Stone Age of energy to a cleaner, more abundant future.
Right, and one of the key themes that emerged was this idea of distributed energy.
Right.
It's a concept worth exploring a bit further.
Absolutely. For our listeners who might be hearing this term for the first time,
Yeah.
can you give us a clear definition of distributed energy
Sure.
and why it's so significant in the context of Solarpunk?
Distributed energy is about generating power closer to where it's used, whether that's on rooftops in communities or even individual homes.
Okay.
It's a move away from those massive centralized power plants that have dominated the energy landscape for so long.
So it's about decentralization and empowering individuals and communities to take control of their energy production.
Right.
Kind of like how the internet shifted power away from traditional media outlets and give everyone a voice.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And just like the internet democratized information, distributed energy has the potential to democratize access to clean, affordable power.
But how exactly does this shift to distributed energy disrupt the traditional power utilities?
Well,
I imagine they're not too happy about this change.
their business model is built around generating power at centralized plants and selling it to us through a vast network of transmission lines.
Right.
But with distributed energy, people are generating their own power, especially during those peak demand times when utilities make the most profit.
Ah, so it's like cutting out the middleman
Exactly.
and taking control of your own energy destiny.
Yes.
No more relying on a single source of power and being subject to their pricing whims.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting for our Solar Age listeners.
Right.
Imagine a future where you're not just a passive consumer of energy,
Right.
but an active producer generating your own clean power and even selling excess back to the grid.
It's a vision of empowerment and energy independence, key pillar of the Solarpunk ethos. But are there any real-world examples of this distributed energy model in action?
Oh, yeah.
Something our listeners can point to as proof that this isn't just some futuristic fantasy.
Absolutely. One inspiring example is the island nation of Tokelau in the South Pacific.
Okay.
They made headlines a few years ago when they became the first country in the world to generate 100% of their electricity from solar power.
100% solar. That's incredible.
It is.
Talk about leading by example.
Yeah.
What were some of the key factors that enabled them to achieve this?
They embraced a distributed energy model, installing solar panels on rooftops and community buildings, reducing their reliance on expensive and polluting diesel generators.
Okay.
It was a combination of political will, community engagement, and technological innovation.
It's a powerful testament to what's possible when communities come together to embrace a clean energy future.
Yeah.
It also begs the question, if a small island nation can achieve 100% solar, what's stopping larger, more developed countries from following suit?
That's a question a lot of people are asking. The technology exists, the costs are coming down, and the environmental benefits are undeniable.
Right.
It really comes down to overcoming political inertia and the influence of the fossil fuel industry.
It's a battle for sure. But as we've seen with other disruptive technologies, the power of innovation and public demand can eventually topple even the most entrenched interests.
Exactly, and that's where the Solarpunk community comes in.
Yeah.
By advocating for change, supporting clean energy policies, and embracing sustainable technologies, we can help accelerate this transition to a more abundant future.
It's about creating a groundswell of support that's too powerful to ignore. Now, speaking of abundance, one of the key arguments of Solarpunk is that this transition to clean energy will lead to a world of limitless possibilities. Can you elaborate on that for our listeners?
Imagine a world where energy is no longer a scarce commodity, but something that's readily available and affordable to everyone.
Okay.
This abundance of clean energy could unlock incredible innovations in everything from transportation to manufacturing to agriculture.
It's about breaking free from the limitations of our current energy system and unleashing human ingenuity on a whole new scale.
Yes.
But I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, this all sounds great, but what about the practical challenges?
Yeah.
Isn't clean energy still too expensive or impractical to truly meet the world's energy demands?
It's a common misconception, but the reality is that the cost of clean energy, particularly solar and wind power, has plummeted in recent years.
Okay.
It's now the cheapest source of new electricity generation in many parts of the world, even without subsidies.
So the economics are on our side. But what about the environmental impact? There's been some concern about the mining of materials needed for solar panels and batteries.
Right.
Is clean energy really as clean as it's made out to be?
Yeah. It's crucial to acknowledge that any energy transition will have environmental impacts.
Right.
But it's also important to compare those impacts to the devastating consequences of continuing to rely on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
The science is clear. We need to transition to clean energy as rapidly as possible to avoid the worst effects of climate change.
It's about choosing the lesser of two evils, so to speak.
Yeah.
And ensuring that this transition is as sustainable and equitable as possible.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have open and honest conversations about these challenges, to invest in research and innovation, and to ensure that this clean energy revolution benefits everyone, not just a select few.
It's about creating a future where clean energy and technology are tools for social good, not just profit. Now, I know we've touched on a lot of big picture ideas,
Yeah.
but I'm curious, what are some of the specific technological advancements that are driving this clean disruption and making this Solarpunk future possible?
Welcome back, Solar Age listeners. We've been unpacking how clean disruption is paving the way for a Solarpunk future, but now it's time to get into the nuts and bolts, the specific technologies that are making this transformation possible.
Right, and last time we left off talking about how clean energy isn't just about saving the planet, it's about creating a more abundant and equitable future for everyone.
Absolutely. And for me, one of the most exciting pieces of this puzzle is the electric vehicle revolution.
Okay.
EVs are more than just cars. They're becoming part of a larger interconnected energy ecosystem.
Exactly. And one of the key concepts here is vehicle-to-grid technology, V2G for short.
Okay.
It's about turning EVs into more than just consumers of energy. They can actually feed energy back into the grid when it's needed.
So instead of just draining power, my EV could actually help stabilize the grid.
Yes.
That's incredible. How does that work in practice?
Think of it this way. Millions of EVs are plugged in overnight charging their batteries.
Right. But with V2G, those batteries can release power back into the grid during times of peak demand, like on a hot summer afternoon when everyone's cranking up their air conditioners.
So it's like having a distributed energy storage system.
Yeah.
But instead of relying on stationary batteries, we're using the batteries in our cars.
Right.
That's brilliant. But how realistic is V2G technology? Is it something we'll see in the near future, or is it still a ways off?
It's closer than you might think. There are already pilot programs and real-world examples of V2G happening around the world.
Oh, wow.
For example, some utilities in California are actually paying EV owners to provide grid services using their car batteries.
Wow. So you can actually earn money by letting your car contribute to the grid.
Yeah.
That's a pretty sweet incentive to go electric.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, one of the biggest barriers to EV adoption has been cost.
Yeah.
Are they ever going to be truly affordable for the average person?
That's been a valid concern, but as we've seen with solar panels, the cost of batteries has been dropping rapidly.
Great.
In fact, some experts predict that by 2025, EVs will be on par with or even cheaper than their gas-powered counterparts.
So if cost is no longer a major obstacle, what other factors might accelerate this transition to electric vehicles?
Besides the economic and environmental benefits, there's also the cool factor.
Right.
Tesla has shown the world what's possible with high-performance, stylish electric cars.
Yeah.
And as traditional automakers step up their game, the EV market is becoming more diverse and appealing to a wider range of consumers.
It's no longer just about saving money or the planet. It's about driving a car that's both fun and reflects your values.
Right.
But EVs are just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Another technology that's often associated with the Solarpunk future is self-driving cars.
Right.
What role do they play in this clean disruption?
Ah, yes. Autonomous vehicles. This is where things get really fascinating, especially when we consider how self-driving cars intersect with the rise of car-sharing services.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do these two seemingly separate trends connect?
Think about how we use cars today. Most of the time, they're just sitting idle, parked in our driveways or garages.
Right.
But with autonomous vehicles, your car could drop you off at work, and then instead of sitting there all day, it could go off and give rides to other people, earning you money in the process.
So it's like turning your personal car into a self-driving taxi service. That's a game changer. But what about all the jobs associated with driving?
Yeah.
What happens to taxi drivers, Uber drivers, truck drivers, and everyone else who makes a living behind the wheel?
That's one of the big questions surrounding this transition to autonomous vehicles. It's likely to be a period of significant disruption, but it's also an opportunity to create new jobs and industries.
So it's not just about replacing existing jobs with robots. It's about reimagining the entire transportation ecosystem and finding new ways to create value and opportunity.
Exactly. And this is where the principles of Solarpunk become so important. It's not just about blindly embracing technology for technology's sake. It's about ensuring that these advancements benefit everyone and lead to a more just and equitable society.
It's about using technology to create a world that's not just sustainable, but also more humane and fulfilling.
Precisely. Now, we've covered a lot of ground today, but it's important to remember that this is just the beginning. The future is being written right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping it.
So for our Solar Age listeners, what are some practical things you can do today to be part of this Solarpunk movement?
Embrace the power of individual action. Consider installing solar panels, switching to an EV, or simply being more mindful of your energy consumption. Support policies that promote clean energy and invest in sustainable businesses.
Okay.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the collective momentum.
It's about using our voices, our choices, and our resources to create the world we want to see. A world powered by clean energy, driven by innovation, and guided by the principles of sustainability, equity, and abundance.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll look back at this time as the beginning of the Solarpunk era.
Thanks for joining us on this Deep Dive Solar Age, listeners. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've discussed today. Share your comments below and let us know what other topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes. Until then, keep those Solarpunk dreams alive.
If you enjoyed this episode of The Solar Age, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you won't miss any future episodes. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about what resonated with you or share any ideas you'd like us to explore in upcoming episodes. Let's keep the conversation about a brighter future going.